Righto, thank you very much. So we'll see how the volume level was. I haven't checked out the mic. I usually use a wireless microphone too. This one with the wire was a little bit cumbersome and I'm using an old-fashioned microphone. It's really old-fashioned if you think about it. I spent a lot of time on radio when I was in my youth as a disc jockey, and we had these old-fashioned microphones. And you come close and go far away. So anyway, hopefully I won't blast you out. Anyway, everyone, welcome again for this presentation. It's an honor for me to be here. I wanted to thank both Anders and Indrek for giving me the opportunity to come and chat with you. And you'll be talking about team building today and going through some specific exercises. I think what I'd like to do in terms of my presentation is to be able to see, as you build your team as an entrepreneur for the future, what is your dream team? Who's going to be that team of people who are going to take you to the next level? And before I start my presentation, I'd like to start with a quote with a gentleman who I met at Apple Computer when I was working with Regis McKenna on the Apple computer account. And this gentleman was really the mentor to Steve Jobs, as well as the second CEO of Apple, and he brought Apple public. Incredible man. The gentleman's name is Mike Markkula. Actually, his first name is Otsmaa, and he wanted to make sure he could Americanize it. Wonderful. I could tell you later on a story when I met him the first time at Pebble Beach, but it's not appropriate for this crowd as we speak right now. So what I'd like to do is actually start with his quote. You should never start a company with the goal of getting rich. Your goal should be making a company that will last. And what that last means is making a contribution to the future. And in essence, I'm so happy to be here because I'm really trying to make a small contribution to your future and try to draw back on my experiences and provide you some strategies for success as you build your executive team. And not to belabor this in terms of drawing my experiences, as you can see in my hair, I've lost most of it in my work in the US. And my career really is based on really two categories of companies that I've worked for. One is in terms of established companies. The other one is regarding startups. I was very fortunate to start my career at an advertising agency named Ogilvy & Mather in New York. And the reason I bring that up was in my account management team, I had the actual founder, David Ogilvy, lecturing to me and teaching us in the account team, and myself in particular, the principles of positioning, branding, and advertising. It's an incredible experience. And that experience led me to a lot of experiences in advertising, but most notably when I had the opportunity to work for Regis McKenna, because I got a phone call from New York. And the phone call was, and in English you'd say, "Is this Matty Otsmaa?" I said, "Yes, it is." "Hi, I'm from Regis McKenna." I said, "Okay, I don't even know where you are from." And he said, "Yeah, we're interested in you in terms of running our advertising account." I said, "Oh, that's cool." And I said, "Yeah, the guy works from a garage." "Oh, come on." Yeah, no, really. He's developed this thing called an Apple computer. So I was just about ready to hang up. And he says, "You really should check this out." And it was a life changer as I went out and had the opportunity to work with this gentleman. Not the one in the picture there, but the one pictured here. I'm really one of thousands who work for Steve, so I don't have any sort of name or claim to my experience at Apple. But I will share some of my experiences there, and I think it'll be helpful for you in terms of your team building. After Apple, I worked for a number of other ad agencies and also major corporations. And there what I learned was how to position companies, how to brand companies, and make them successful. During this process, what I really learned was I had a love for starting new companies, new products, and new services. Because after Apple, I had worked on a number of other technology startups, and most importantly, as an entrepreneur, I said, I can't take it anymore. I got to do it myself. That's probably why you're here too. And I started off with my own company with Affinicorp USA, in a process where I had raised over $6 million and sold the company, and worked on another 5 other startups, and right now working on creditping.com. So what I really wanted to do, and why I bring this up, because notably we're going to have some excellent speakers here who will be talking about one company specific in terms of success. Because I'm an advertising person, I've been trained to be what they call like a hitman. You go in, you position the company, you get it going, stuff like that, and move on. You move on and move on. Well, I've moved on a lot of the companies, and hopefully today my objective here is to provide you in terms of some of my experiences. I'm asked a number of questions as you as an entrepreneur will be asked in your business, like what is your business, how do you position it, who is your executive team, where do you expect to get funding, why will you become successful, and how will you avoid the pitfalls. Today we're going to focus on who is on your executive team and who should you have on your executive team, and what type of people you need to succeed. So the mission of this presentation is to be able to know, how do you know if you have the right team? Who do you really need on your executive team? What can you outsource? Where can you find talent? What are some management pitfalls to avoid? And believe me, I wish I could know half the pitfalls I fell into. You never know, but at least we'll talk about some of them. So to do this presentation, I thought it would be very cool to come up with specific business quotes of industry leaders that have affected me positively in my career and my life, and likewise to kind of draw on 5 axioms or create 5 business axioms. I know Estonian is very, very quantitative, so if you put them in the axioms and in terms of formulas, stuff like that, it's more important. So I have 5 of them for you to consider. And let's start with number 1, with a quote. Building great technology requires both innovations and the skills to bring innovation to market. The reason I really bring this quote up first, the Nordic region is known for technology, the brights, the engineering, the IT skills. And that's the key selling point and positioning of the Nordic market as we look at. However, a key aspect also is to understand and how to bring it to marketplace for success. And one of the things when you have to start in, as you start your entrepreneurial company or you've already started it, axiom 1, understand who your business is. Before determining how you know you have the right complement of executives working with you, you need a clear focus on your company. You have to really know how to define your company, who your target audience is, what's your company's positioning and branding, and what category do you compete in. The thing that I found in my career and working with like that is companies are always surprised, and entrepreneurs are always surprised in which business they wind up in. I've had the good fortune to work for a number of major corporations in America and on a number of assignments. And these assignments start with defining what industry, what category do you compete in. On up, when I'm working with Hyundai, as a car company, the greatest opportunity and one of the things that they really didn't recognize was they were a finance company. And they actually made equal or more money on the financing. Or with Johnson & Johnson, who's a pharmaceutical company. You know what? They're still known in America as a baby products company. Experian, which was Experian Interactive, was in lead generations. And you know what? They were selling mortgages online. They were a financial services company. Shikai was a developer, actual entrepreneurial Estonian, Dr. Dennis Sepp, who I've had a number of years to work with. Nice, very, very nice guy. He started with a shampoo company, cleaning, shampoo, products from India. He's a health and beauty aid. He's selling beauty. So sometimes what's important about this is when you start your company, your specific product, you have something in your mind already that I'm going to be A. And most often, you're not A. You wind up being B. And so what's really important as the first axiom, define the category of your company and determine if you have the right people who are associated with you to make you successful. And not to belabor the point, but Apple started with circuit boards. They're really a marketing company. Online lead generator, as Experian lower my bills, they were actually in financial services. Been working with a company that spent all their time on developing online security, real-time security for personal information. 30, 40, 45 engineers. They have the platform together, et cetera. You know, their business is an ad network. They're in sales. So why is that, again, important for our discussion in terms of building a team? You need to know you have, in terms of where you are as a company, to have the right people in place. And I'm going to give an example. Again, this was going back to my days at Regis McKenna, when understanding what a company was, that I was told as I came in, there was a product that combined the terminal with a keyboard, monitor, and a mouse. I was told the name of that product was an Apple, which Steve did a brilliant job of doing that, and it was a fully integrated consumer product targeted for the masses. When I was looking at the positioning of Apple II, it was almost like looking at the positioning of what Apple as a company would be. And what really Apple was, or is a tool for personal advancement, which is adaptable, expandable, and versatile to your needs. It's like a bicycle for your mind, getting you there more expediently. It's not a technology company, not building circuits. It's a marketing company. Marketing companies need to hire marketing people. Going to axiom 2, quote number 2. This quote is from Don Valentine, who's the founder of Sequoia Capital, and obviously one of the major and the founding fathers of VCs in Silicon Valley. And when he was talking to Steve Jobs, he said, if you want me to finance you, you need to have one person as a partner who understands marketing and distribution and who could write a business plan. So, in essence, point number 2, once you position and define your company you compete in, you could determine the skills you need for your executive team, operational team, and what you need to outsource. Your executive team and your startup team, even at the early days, really requires a diversified skill set. I put this together because in my experience of startups, there are a number of hurdles you have to go through to become successful. Your executive team might consist of you yourself. It might be 2 or 3 people. But the commonalities of your hurdles to become successful and to get initial funding and build your staff are at least some of these points, and there are others. But in essence, as we spoke about, you have to put together the concept, product, and positioning. You're going to need to have seed capital. Most often, in terms of the entrepreneur starting, understands the concept, understands the need to get seed capital, which comes from the incubator, which comes from the wonderful sources here we have in Estonia, or likewise with families and friends. Then you have the person who is the technologist in your team. That's the starting point. A good way to proceed is if you have a concept and you have a technology person, you really have the visionary, which may be you, and you might be the technologist also, or you have someone on the technology side. Most often, it goes right away, I'm going to build a product, and I'm going to see if I can get in the marketplace. It might be good to understand what your business model is first, and also kind of think out some financial projections. Why is this important? Those skill sets for business model and financial projections are finance people or CFOs. And you're going to have to ask yourself internally, do I really know how to do that? Can I really put together, before I start my beta test, or understand what's going to be my business model and projections? So that tells me already I know you're going to probably, one needs to somewhere outsource and get that information to be successful up front. Likewise, once you finish your beta test, you're going to need, in terms of Series A funding, if you go through a Series A funding route, you're going to need an executive summary, business plan development, and then go to funding. That takes the other business development skill sets and investment banking skill sets. And then you have to ask yourself, do you have those? Because, in essence, you're going to have to go all those steps to get to the funding stage and then really put together your company. So the objective here is for you to recognize as you start your company and you start this team building, etc., I'm going to need some stuff. Good news, you're not the only ones. Everyone has to go through this process, and you have to honestly evaluate what your skills are in your team. Would you hire these two people? Well, they were hired, and they were very, very successful. But as Don Valentine said in Sequoia Capital, you know what you guys are missing on your executive team? You need marketing distribution. You need to have marketing distribution because you had the visionary, you had the technologist, you needed someone to develop that business plan. So even in the early days when Steve Jobs got started, he is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, but he did not know how to write a business plan. He did not know how to bring a product in the marketplace, and that's okay. The key thing is to understand what your needs and voids are and be able to develop and get the right people. So step one, you got an executive team, whether it's 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you, to get through their hurdles. Step two is to understand there is an org chart to success. And the org charts vary by industry and category, and most likely your skill sets or the executive management skill sets you have of your 2 or 3 people are centered here. But you got to remember, these are all the voids you're going to have to fill. And someone's have to make those decisions. And so, again, the good news here is you don't have to make them all at one time, and you don't have to make it even, as you start initially with your business concept. But you have to have in the back of your mind is, if you're going to be successful and you're going to think about strategies in the future, you're going to have to look at a CEO, president, strategists, and programmers, just as Apple did in its days, and hired accordingly when there was an appropriate time. And most importantly, the brilliance of Steve Jobs was he was a perfectionist. It had to be perfect. And he knew internally he couldn't hire the people to take him to that next level. So what he said is, I'm going to go and hire the very, very best outside talent to make himself successful. He hired the best public relations, the best advertising agency. He hired people to develop the product and his power supply, which sounds so simple right now. Designers, world class. But there is a balance of that internal, external talent and what you need. And the brilliance of that, Steve Jobs at that time, was that he understood. As you go and develop your product, and as you keep on going, you want to have in your back of your mind is no man or a woman is an island, and you're going to need that external help, and that's okay. Moving on to number 3. We're just talking about outsourcing. But outsourcing also has its downfalls. There are drawbacks to outsourcing. Top concern, intellectual property rights, and the question whether individuals or companies will afford the same IP protections, i.e. someone could steal your ideas, right? And that absolutely happens. That's a reality. There's a price also in terms of taking someone's idea. Sometimes it's a high price, sometimes it's a low price, but it's a risk that you have to manage and you have to understand. Because to become successful, and in terms of your team, it's not only the people you have internally, but in terms of what you outsource and externally. So while outsourcing is a necessity, only outsource what you really need. I don't know where that came from. Doesn't like to go away. So in terms of outsourcing, make sure focus on your core strategy and core business and try not to obviously outsource those key functions. But if you're missing something that's critical to your success, do it. Get the right person. Another thing in terms of outsourcing, understand costs and efficiencies. I hear often stories saying, I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning because I had to be able to go through 50 consumer complaints, and I had to answer them by hand, and I had to do it myself. You know, probably your time would have been probably better to find a cousin or someone else who could help you with that. Because often as an entrepreneur, you wind up having the chip on the shoulder saying, I got to do it all, and I'm going to save that last penny, and I'm going to be up till 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning and doing it. You're here for the long term. You want to think of how you're going to want to manage your business. You do want to leverage external operational management. So what that means is things that you know that are not core to your strategy, not core to your business, that you could easily outsource and there's a low risk. You want to retain flexibility, internal staffing. Some of the most successful marketing companies that are being launched right now, especially on online internet basis, has a team of 5 or 10 people and has $100 million plus revenues because everything else is outsourced because it's not critical to the business. So you really want to understand, and whatever you additionally hire, do you hire as a part-time or becomes a full-time employee? So it's something that you control, that power. And finally, it's all part of risk management. The trade-offs, your time, the cost, in terms of where you're going in the company, and you want to make sure that you're making the best decisions. So outsourcing is a requirement for success, and literally in terms of, people ask me, so what do you outsource and what don't you? So in the US, the first thing is, the things that are non-strategic or core to your business, outsourcing work that does not require technical skills or the rote technical skills are things that are done all the time. And American startups outsource everything from data entry to customer service, everything that, again, that isn't strategic to the business. And when the companies are developed from telemarketing, customer service, road IT, UI work, where it's going to be in the Philippines, where the work comes to Eastern Europe and even other, hopefully it stays in Estonia or Finland, but likewise if it's in Eastern Europe or whatever like that, that's the reality of business. But it's the strategic stuff. And you say, you know, I don't know where to go. I don't know who could help me in some of my core skill sets that I really need. And you require those, but they're not found in all the industry that you're going into, or might not be found in your country of domicile, i.e. here either in Estonia or Finland. So startups often require outsourcing of finance, funding executives, investment bankers, sales directors, marketing executives, public relations executives, advertising managers, all of that. North America is a great gold mine for this talent, but it could be very difficult to find the right talent. So the key thing is outsourcing and looking to help you here in Estonia or Finland, and utilizing talent in North America to help you is very, very good. There are a number of recommendations that StartSmart and the very successful entrepreneurial companies here in Estonia can make recommendations. The one thing I could tell you, in my case, I've been working with these 4 individuals from the last 10 to 30 years. Because I'm not an island myself. And when I need investment banking or sales management, I turn to 2 other fellow Estonians who are doing this successfully in North America. I turn to other individuals in public relations and online marketing. I provide you these resources not as a plug, because they're very, very successful in what they do in the US and Canada to begin with. But sometimes you don't know where to turn to. Sometimes you need that advice or who you can make that email or that phone call to. So it's something to consider. But the reality is that you're going to have to hire people here and outsource people and talent here. So, and you're going to have to be able to bring talent either into your business here in Estonia or Finland, and you're going to say, where do I find this talent? Where do I get the people? Well, in the age of social media, everyone becomes a brand. We all have to self-promote. By Alex Sapp on Forbes magazine. The good news is the talent that you're most likely looking for is online. And the talent you're most likely looking for is also people who have branded themselves online. However, you know, this is one of the real tricky equations. You want to find talent using digital, but you still want to hire talent through referrals. You know, I wish that we're in a place that we could do everything online. And I'm preaching for this group already knows in LinkedIn, Facebook, industry groups, online, and you look at your industry, and if you've defined your industry different to what you are, you can easily go and look at those industry groups and get the right type of people. But you know what? You still have to go to a referral process. It's tough. That's why I bring you some of the names of the four executives who I recommended for outsourcing. So one of the questions I'm asked, what do people do right now when you don't have a specific referral? There's a huge industry, or a very significant industry, that's developing in the US, and you may already be well aware of it. And it's really a surrogate for referrals. They're online influence scores. How many people are familiar with online influence scores? Yeah. So, you know what? It analyzes a person's influence across different social networks. And one thing that is occurring, which is definitely in a trend in the next 2 to 3 years that you'll be seeing, is in addition to referrals, you're going to be going to Klout, Peer Index, Statista, Jenga, and you're going to find a score. If that person you're looking for is in marketing or sales, they need to have a high score, or they will need to have a high score. And it's usually scored from 0 to 100. It's in terms of, how many people you have, how much time you tweet, what in terms of your relationships, and they run specific algorithms in terms of getting that score. But if you're going to be looking at sales and marketing people, right now companies, when you look at hiring person A versus person B, and if both have the same skill set, guess what? The Klout score, if you have a higher score, you get hired. What that means for you as you're looking at people and you find someone, when you do your due diligence, definitely in the next year or two, even if not sooner, you will be able to go into these resources and to see in terms of their influence online. And those influence online for the people that you'll be looking for are their business ties, and how active are their business ties, how active are they in the online groups, and this measurement. And in fact, Statista has right now about 35 million emails in their database. It's frightening. It is frightening. And also in terms of looking for measurement of talent, like I say, some industries, when it comes to marketing, sales, and operations, you have a lot of people who are on social media. Investment bankers in other areas do not. And myself, it's interesting, in terms of my businesses and how I've dealt it, I've made a conscious effort not to be on. So you're going to have still a group of of business executives in categories who are not going to be participating, but I do believe even us in the next 2-3 years, the gun's going to be pointing at our head that, for us to be successful, we must be on board. So this is a great surrogate in terms of for referral. But what happens if you have a friend that gives you a referral on someone? And this is the referral. He's a dreadful manager. I found him impossible to work for him. He acts without thinking and bad judgment. Who do you think he's referring to? Yeah. I don't think the last part of this statement is correct, but he is very demanding and difficult to work for sure. So axiom 5 is you need to hire the best. I even say you have to hire people who are brighter than you. You always want to hire someone brighter than you. But then, coming back to the theme, you have to be able to manage the unexpected. Quote from the Jobs biography: hire executives who are creative, wickedly smart, and slightly rebellious. Why slightly rebellious? You don't want a yes person. You don't want a yes person. You want someone always, always, always on your tail and pushing them, right? But when you do this, remember, hiring superstars has its price. A style of management always has its up and down side. And what's the issue with A personality? They want to be in control. They want to be in control of you. They want to run your company. So I'd like to show you an example when we're talking about pitfalls in terms of managing pitfalls and what are some of the things that might come up with the A personality style. This so happens to be a reflection out of a gentleman from this book of people describing someone's management style. Hey, always this is the downside behavior, the negative behavior that was experienced by this, who was done by this one CEO, who you know the name of the person. Always inject your personal feelings about people. Let them know what you really feel at all times. Another thing, really key, if you're going to be A personality, always introduce tensions, politics, and hassles to the workplace, because you're going to get the most disharmony at that time. Here's another one. Attack great ideas at first and then claim them to be yours afterward. That's great. Don't always consider speaking the truth. The truth always gets in the way. Rules don't apply to me. Exploit the weakness of others, especially your competition, and take full advantage of it. Do you know what? These are common management traits based on my experiences working so many in the C-level management or EVP level management, and it's always true. It's not true only with one person, but there's a management trait and style. This is a highly successful management trait. One pitfall, you could say, with any of these states of this behavior, you can say, I want to fire this person. We just can't have someone's going to bring this harmony here. I can't deal with it. Someone's not telling me the truth, you're gone. But the reality, to be successful and to hire the best, you need to really understand how to manage the best too. So instead of focusing on the downside of that behavior, let's look what the upside correlation to that is, and what's the management axiom in terms of management. If someone's really injecting their personal feelings about people, the reason why that's occurring most often is when you have great people, you don't have to baby them. It's true. You have an A player, they're going to work on their own and stuff like that. You don't have to baby them at all. And if they're going to be injecting stuff like that, it's something for you to manage. And the management axiom is that if you expect people to do great things, you can get them to do great things. And that's what Steve Jobs was just brilliant in. Number two, those people who introduce tensions, politics, and hassles to work, instill within your team, it's an elite team. You are on a specific mission. Why? Because you're here to create a mission that is game-changing, and that's why you've hired that person. You wouldn't be going an entrepreneurial idea if you didn't think you're going to make a specific change to the world in that specific category. You want to make sure you communicate that to those people. Attack great ideas at first and then claim them to be your own. The other side of the coin is most A personality types who do that also acknowledge, give credit when credit is truly due. Because they know. It's not like they're saying that, they don't know it's a great idea. They kind of even know it's a great idea first. But in the end, you want to handsomely reward exceptional efforts, whoever you're going to be working with. Don't always consider the truth when speaking. This hurts me with many of the clients that I've dealt with in the past. But you know what? Their real motivation of what they're doing really is they have a big picture to communicate. They want to go somewhere big, just like you. Just like you. You got to motivate those players on your team that they understand the big picture. And the reason of your mission, I picked this up from Star Trek. I have no mercy. Go where no man has gone before. That's what you're doing. Why in the heck would you be right now as an entrepreneur with a concept and ready to go forward where someone hasn't gone before? Rules don't apply to yourself. You know what? The other side of the coin of that is you have the ability to change reality through intensity. If it's not working, you know what happens? You apply more resources to the problem. You keep on working and driving. You're not always successful, but guess what? What happens is you demand the impossible because it can happen. And what happens? It's that breakthrough you're looking for. Because in your entrepreneurial business, wherever you start, there's going to be a moment that occurs that is, and it's that breakthrough, and you know it. You would have to have driven all of this. And finally, in terms of exploiting weaknesses of others, these are great things. This was where Steve Jobs was phenomenal. Do the greatest thing possible, or even a little greater. You want to make it absolutely perfect. That perfection-driven means you don't get it right away, but you try, and keep on going, because it needs to be perfect. Your success in the future is going to be able to manage your internal team, that executive team, getting the outsourcing, and having to manage that A personality type, because I know that from my own experiences, what has made me the manager and leader that I am is having to be able to manage people who are brighter and better than I am. And your success for your future, along with your team, is to do the same. With that, as you're going down your road, in terms of as an entrepreneur, and whether you already have a concept, you're in the prototype stage of a beta test, you've gotten seed funding, remember a few key points. 1, clearly understand the business you're in. Number 2, if you have to do this is painful. Reinvent your team for the skills required for success. Right? Number 3, source and hire the best talent, whatever it takes. Going back to Otsmaa quote before, strive towards making a company that will last. 5, you gotta have courage. There's an Estonian trait of failure being bad. Failure is a stepping stone for success. And you will have multiple failures as an entrepreneur until you find the right thing. You gotta have the courage to go forward with your convictions for your startup. And finally, with all of this, one of the greatest things I've learned through this process, and this goes back in terms of not being the richest person, not being the smartest person, and God knows I wish I could have done many things different in my own life. But there's one thing I do recognize. The journey is the reward. We're here once. Make it happen for yourself. Enjoy the journey, because in the end, that's all you have. It's great. I thank you very much.
Thank you for Mighty. I think that's, at least in my opinion, one of the best speeches I've heard about team building. And I've been to many conferences, so I know what I'm talking about. Still, Mighty, can we have you up here for another 10 or 15 minutes for some questions? I'll start up with a question of my own. About team building, a lot of the VCs say that they are always impressed with teams where they have two sides covered. One that's pulling and kind of the pace back, and the one that's kind of driving the pace forward. Sometimes it's the CTO and the CEO, sometimes it's some other people, but kind of a duo that needs to drive the company. Do you agree with that concept?
They also referred as the yin-yang function. You know what? That's the reality of business. I think great functional businesses, as they mature, get to that phase where you have the driving force and you have the force in terms of the stability in the business. And bringing that discipline early into a startup is very, very good. And part of that discipline is actually in the prioritization of your goals. If you have more than 3 goals that are your top priorities, you've got too many. And that yin-yang effect is those goals that are number 9 and 10 and 11, and the people driving, we got to do this, and also being able to step back and say, you know, it's not our top 3. So part of the axiom or correlation there is understanding what your 3 priorities and focus, laser focus on those. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, Sven.
What do you think of sole founders, and what would you recommend them to do? To keep on looking, or do you think they can be successful? And could you elaborate on that?
Sole founders are one people. Everyone who starts a company is a sole founder. You are. It's a question, this is my opinion, is that if you wind up going to, after the seed round and you have something successful and you're going to go to Series A funding, they're going to expect a management team, because that Series A funding will be in $1 million plus, and right now that hot spot, or the sweet spot right now for funding, is in between the 3 and 5 million area. They want to make sure they see an established business going on, and one sole proprietor is very difficult to do that, and they want to see that management team. That isn't to say a sole proprietor can't outsource everything and it's on an FTE basis, and that doesn't mean a sole proprietor is not seeking the goal of going to Series A funding and wants to be a sole proprietor and has a business that could be run as a sole proprietor in the retail business. So that's the exception. But if you are going on forward and looking for Series A funding and going to the classical method through the seed capital, et cetera, and you're going to be starting a company, it's better not to be an island.
More questions there?
Thanks. I like your presentation.
Thank you.
However, it's kind of important to optimize your team, of course. But I would claim that most startups comes maybe from one person's head, and then he kind of engages his friend. So how can I optimize my friend kind of to be a good team member? I mean, I can, when the company grows, I can go through this process and this matters, but it's very local, you know, in terms of people in place. Most startup teams. So kind of, the first time I heard this kind of presentation, I got very frightened about, wow, I get to like have is my friend like that kind of person?
You know what? It's frightening in many ways. Because I'm going to answer two questions, the frightening part and what motivates the friend. The frightening thing is not knowing what to expect. I wish I could tell you it's different of what you saw. It isn't. And there's even more hurdles. But the first part of your business is motivating your friend, just as Mr. Jobs did with Mr. Wozniak. And it wasn't difficult if you read the book, because I never knew that until I read the book. It was something, he had to go to his family, his friends, and plead and get on his knees until he joined, and coming for Otsmaa the same thing. However, there's a turning point when you know your concept and what you may be doing as a beta is that reality. Once it turns into that reality, and you, a successful entrepreneur with your leadership, you are the one to motivate and drive. This is for real. This is going to change the way things are. Do you want to be on this team? And that's that function, and it happens. It's at one point where you recognize this is for real and this is going to be good. That's where it becomes most successful. Before that, it winds up being influence and friends and everything else that you need to do, and that's the tough part. And a lot of the failures of great concepts and ideas fail up front because of that. But if you already know that right now is going to be the case, you can't give up. You have to get to the point where you know that's a viable opportunity. And when it's a viable opportunity, then you have to see, did you do your beta test? Do you have a business model in place? And that's why I kind of tell you up front, if I had the foresight sometimes in my own companies, that's why I say, get that business model first in your mind and understand what business you're in. Another thing, as a foresight, whatever it's worth, company multiples in financial services and marketing are 2 and 3 times multiples earnings. When you have a software for sales service, it's an 8-time multiple. And a big data company is a 10-time multiple. So if you have a company and if you think that's going to fit into one of those squares with a high multiple, VCs are very happy to fund those high multiples with the team. And likewise, where you are with your friend, and if you're in there and you're one of those high multiple type companies, that's a pretty nice leverage in terms of talking about the big picture.
There's a phase 1 and phase 2 in between there.
Yeah. Correct.
Cool. More questions from here in the front.
Thanks very much. What do you think about bootstrapping? I mean, you've focused on getting the investor in, but where's the balance? And how do you actually recognize that, okay, I can bootstrap? No problem.
You must the answer is, great question, you must bootstrap first. It's not a question of bootstrapping. It gets to a point, again, it's knowing the second you know you have that breakthrough and it's something that can happen, then you have to ask yourself when the bootstrapping is, can I continue? Do I now know I have something? And then it's making those phone calls and getting advice. One of the nicest things in terms of being an entrepreneur, and those people in the VC or in terms of businesses people have done before, they know the pain of going through this process. And they're very good at advice. And most often, not always, but most often that advice is good. I think that's why you always need to be able to go and talk to people from the external environment who have done it before, and you have a trust, so you know when to go through it. The problem with bootstraps and not doing it, it remains a bootstrap for year 2 and 3 and 4, and then it just doesn't happen, and you don't want to be there. Thanks.
Question in the back. There's one there.
Hi, my question is about the first days of the startup. So when you are only 2 members or 3 members, and basically each person has a vision. and you have some idea, and you rely on mostly on your instincts to go ahead because you really don't have hard data or anything. And it happens that if you have two visionaries in the team and they both have different gut instincts, so there are always many conflicts. So how do you manage that? And is there some kind of threshold level where you should know that, okay, this is it, we split it right now here, or how do you go about this?
So let's go to axiom 2. Great question. Let's introduce tensions, politics, as well as hassles. That's exactly what happens with two visionaries. That's what happens having two A people in the room at all time. This is not this is where one of the A's or whoever's going to be part of a team must take that leadership position. And that leadership position winds up really bringing your team into that elite focus, and that your concept and idea is the biggest game changer. Because in the bottom line, you're doing this, so is a game changer. If you don't have that consensus, there's an old rule. This is terrible. We did this in advertising. You put the two creative directors in one room, you lock up the room, and then in the next morning, one of them will probably come up with a consensus. But in essence, if you got to be a business leader, you got to do that. Sometimes being a leader, as we look at some of the greatest leaders, means you're not a nice person. One of my faults is, if anyone else tells me my management style, is that I'm too nice. I'm too pleasing. Oh, Matti, everything's so good what you do. But sometimes I got to raise my voice and say, no, you just got to put down. So it's not a clean answer. The person who could prove themselves that they have the biggest game changer and the biggest money, and that has to work. And if then it becomes an issue, guys, you just got to lock yourself in the room, hammer it out for 5-6 hours. It doesn't work, go back again for the next day, take whatever, until finally one person comes to the submission and says, yeah, that's the way to go. Cool?
More questions? One there, left. Okay, go for it.
When you start a startup, first it's like local business kind. So the target geographically, let's say, is restrained, and you obviously want to grow to something that it might go global. When you're getting the team together, you might find people that are good for the locally, but might not be good if you want to grow big. Should you take that into consideration and say, I'm not picking these people because on the longer run they will not suit me, or not?
Another good question. That also applies to team members you start up with originally, and they don't have the skill sets to move forward when it becomes a bigger company. Or likewise, it's something in a local basis and stuff like that. As a leader, you must hire the best people at the right time, right place. When the other opportunity comes up, you have to make this decision, and it's a difficult decision, of the executive, if they're already in terms of part of the team and they have equity in the team, what is going to be their function as another person comes on. Because the reality is, even who you have in your team set up front, and if you're successful in a 2-year basis, you'll be very, very surprised to see how your management team is different. And that's why I said the word reinvent in one of the conclusions, because you're going to have to reinvent yourself, and the people are going to come on, and some of the people who come on are just going to be not going to work, and some of the people are going to work. So, and you have to take the risk, make sure that you get the very, very best. And that's why the hiring, if you have the brightest people, you're going to have the clashes and you're going to have the difficulties. But you need, as that company, to move forward, and you have to manage that. And there's always difficult decisions to be made with the people local.
My name is John Tangstrom, and I got a startup up in Finland called Tagonize. It's a mobile sensory technology startup. And you kind of touched already now on what I wanted to ask you, and that was about the life cycle of hiring and firing people that you bring on board. Because you can bring people on board with the good intentions that they can produce, but they're not. So you have to get rid of that dead weight and let them go. So maybe if you could add a few more words about this.
Yeah, I'm particularly sensitive because in terms of executives in my management team, I think I've only fired from all my companies, stuff like that, 2. And here comes a personality trait. I will work with a driftwood because I know they're very bright. And I try to assign that driftwood to other assignments in other areas where they aren't in the mainstream. That causes more agony with the other A team players because they know you've done that. And the solution is exactly correct. You have to make the right decision of letting specific people go. And that's one of the most toughest things in a management situation. And it's something that I, myself, have had difficulties with. And in the extreme cases, I did that, but it's a very, very painful. And one of the things to think about as you put together your company, instead of them coming into the executive team, they're part of the operational team. And the operational team doesn't have the same founding stock and same restrictions, but they still have a great terms of upside potential, and then they know they're working. And if you have to make any changes, you make it in the operational team level, so your executive team remains core, that's functioning going forward, and those executives in the operational teams are the ones where you can make the changes, or you could also do it on in terms of outsourcing or on an FTE basis, a part-time or full-time. So you could, if you know that in advance, and going back to the local, having in terms of executive management, and you have an operational team, define it as an operational team. Define what the executive team is in the operational team, and those operational team members are going to be critical to your success. There's nothing downplaying that, because you could have most often the CFO is in the executive team, but doesn't mean in terms of finance and some of your businesses that that's in the operational team, as well as the person in sales, in terms of people operations, in terms of also in product most often is in the executive team and the visionary. But you could kind of divide that and think about that in terms of your strategy, because that provides you greater flexibility. Good question.
Let's take 2 more questions. One from here. Go ahead. Sorry for that.
Okay, one of the tricks nowadays is that you have to act fast and fail fast. But in practice, there is always a tricky question when it is right time to fail. Do you have any secret sauce or some way how to understand? Is it? And in the other hand, there are many of examples that if you try hard enough, even if it's hard, then you may succeed eventually. But you have to make the decision at some point.
Great question. This applies to me. I have a 3-time rule. You're going to try it first, you're going to do it, and I do my very best. I do it the second time, and once I get to the 3rd time, I usually wake up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning after I have already had a bottle of wine before, because I know I've failed, right? And that's where you have to reinvent yourself or reinvent the company. Another key, and why I use the word reinvent, I think as an entrepreneur and where you're going to be in business, you're going to find yourself reinventing yourself and rebranding yourself several times in your career. And the most important thing is failure is okay. And like I said, I don't have time to go into failures because I have some wonderful failures to talk about and some wonderful experiences that I learned from those. And they might have been painful at the time, but every time we go through that, you learn how to reinvent yourself and go forward. So a 3-time rule is good. Bottle of wine, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Nice rule. The last question, please, so we can go forward. And one in the back. Sorry again.
My name is Tipo from Finland. I want to ask you a question on behalf of all the entrepreneurs here. Like you as an entrepreneur, I want to know what gives you the motivation and bring confidence in your startup.
What gives one person the motivation
and the confidence.
and confidence? You know, that's a real tough question. That's a very good question. The second you step out of a corporation and there isn't a paycheck coming to your door, and if you happen to be married or have kids, there is a feeling of confidence. Isn't that what drives entrepreneurs? It's a high risk, high reward. You got to have a stomach for it. It's so interesting in the high risk, high reward area, and I'll make this quick, but I'm always long-winded. I remember my mother, and I remember when I was in university and I was studying pre-med and taking all the chemistry and all the math, sciences, everything else, as a good Estonian boy would do, because I'm going to be a doctor. And I said, Emma, you know, I want to go into advertising. Sounds rumal, isn't it? You want to be a general manager, a business type. You take the courage. Say, none of my peers did. Okay, I'm going to get an MBA and I'm going to go marketing. And I did okay. And then I came up with this idea. And Emma says, my mom never really knew what I was doing anyway, but she says, now what are you doing? Well, I said, I'm going out to start my own company, a Finacorp. And her response was, "Sale teiste rumal." Meaning, how stupid can you be? You got to burn inside. And that means going to 2, 3 months, 6 months, a year, even for me, even longer, where there is little or no money coming in, and that sacrifice. But you know what that does? It fine-tunes your skill sets. If you have something in the back that's always there to give you that break in income and what you do, you always have that safety net. You're a true entrepreneur, you're not going to have that. But what the other side of the coin, it's really great. It focuses you to become successful. It focuses you to prioritize and create that motivation in society to be successful. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And you have to lick your wounds and go back on the corporate side and get a job. That's okay. Because guess what? When you're ready, you go out again. And you go out again and again until you get that successful motivation. So never give up. Always keep on trying. And when you let that umbilical cord go for money like that, it's okay, because thousands of other entrepreneurs have done it and found that motivation for success. Appreciate the question. Thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Big applause. Thank you.